Yes, Drake will go down as a musical legend. He recently broke a 50-year-old record held by the Beatles, but here's the thing, he could have broken this years ago, and proved that ducks are the king of the jungle. How, you may ask? Well, over the years, Drake has passed on some of the most incredible beats, and it makes you wonder, what else could he have accomplished had he not made these beat blunders? So let's talk about the most famous beats Drake has passed on, the stories behind these beats, and we'll also break down how these beats were made. Now let's start off with the first beat that Drake passed on. Way before their feud and all the bad blood, Drake and Kanye were once friends. And it might surprise you that one of the most important Kanye songs could have been a Drake song had he not rejected it. The song I'm talking about is Dark Fantasy. Now it's hard to imagine this as anything other than a Kanye track, but according to No ID, this beat was originally given to Drake, but he'd passed on it. It was also originally meant for Jay-Z's Blueprint 3, another artist I've done a similar video on that you can check out after this one, link is in the description. But when you break down how this beat was made, it's actually kind of unusual. First, I need to address something that I might get some hate for here. As of the recording of this video, the sample in this beat is not widely known. I do have it here and I will use it to recreate the beat, but I will not be telling you what the sample is and I won't be sample snitching. I hope you understand. So first, the sample is pitched down, and this one piece here is played at multiple pitches like so. Then we have these drums that sit on top of the sample that are from Pete Rock allegedly. Now you can hear the beat still feels kind of empty at this point, and that's because there are strings and chimes that are used to fill up more space, which can be a great technique if your beats feel empty too. But here's the unusual part about this beat and what makes Drake's involvement a bit confusing. According to No ID, he and Kanye worked on the chorus and the musical parts of this beat. I believe what he's referring to is how in the full song, we go from that sampled part of the beat to this other one here. And from what it sounds like, that sampled part of the beat was actually made by RZA. The beat overall went through a lot of different variations during the making of Kanye's album, so it's kind of hard to know what Drake actually rejected. Was it the sampled part or that chorus that was actually a full beat at one point? Either way, the song ended up being used as the intro to what might be Kanye's greatest album, so I am happy with where it ended up ultimately. But this isn't the last time Drake and Kanye's paths have crossed when it comes to beats, as I will explain later in this video. Before that though, there are a couple of other amazing beats that Drake has passed on that I want to talk about first. One of them ended up being an incredible posse cut for the ages, which is One Train by A$AP Rocky. So here's Hit Boy talking about Drake's involvement with this beat.
I made the One Train beat and I sent it to Drake. I was trying to get it on his first album. We talking about Thank Me Later.
Wow.
Let's break this beat down and you can hear why Drake rejected it. First, we have these huge, dusty boom bap drums. And from there, we bring in this Egyptian sample. Hit Boy then uses this one section from the sample for the main idea for the beat. It's interesting, I actually did a recent breakdown on Hit Boy's work with Nas, and this beat is actually strikingly similar to Thun. In fact, Hit Boy acknowledges this himself. Both beats have dusty sounding boom bap drums and an Egyptian sample that focuses on strings. Now, as per Hit Boy, this is the reason why Drake actually rejected this beat.
And he was like, man, I already got some kind of on this vibe on the album, which was the record he had with Hov.
The song he's referring to is Light It Up.
Don't get impatient when it takes too long, and trick it all even when it tastes too strong. Yeah.
You can hear, unlike many other songs that were on Drake's album, this beat has similar sounding, huge, dusty boom bap drums. And while it doesn't have an Egyptian string sample, there is another song on this album, Up All Night, that does use strings as its main sound.
Shout out to the fact that I'm the youngest nigga doing it. Cap on, brim, bend, dance.
So maybe a combination of these beats sounding like One Train was what made Drake feel as though he didn't need this beat for his album. Either way, I'm glad what this beat became because Big Crit's verse was crazy on One Train. Next up, we have another beat that Drake passed up on and possibly ended up regretting according to the story. The song in question here is Aston Martin Music by Rick Ross.
Pull up on the block in the drop top chicken box. Mr. K.
Justice League produced this beat, and here's their retelling of how this beat was made.
It's like the key right there, just simplicity. That's all melodically. You got 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 elements.
So this beat only has 4 elements used to build the melodic component. I'll do my best to recreate this using a very inexpensive plugin, Expand, which you can get for like 20 bucks. The first sound that's shown in the Justice League video is something that sounds similar to these bells. After this, we have a layer of vocals that come in. Then we have this synth that has the 2010s written all over it. You don't really hear sounds like this in beats anymore, and personally, I'm happy for it. And then we'll use the same synth played at a lower octave to build the bass line. Then we have the drums, and for the most part, these components are what get used throughout the entire beat, getting filtered and cut and swapped, and that's pretty much it. Now it's confusing why Drake rejected this beat, because in the same Justice League video, they do mention Drake's involvement with the song.
Drake actually hit me and he was like, yo, this beat is crazy, I'ma kill it, you know what I'm saying? Basically, he loved it so much that he did his own version.
So originally Drake loved the beat, made his own song to it, but ultimately decided not to actually use it on an album or a project. And this is where things get confusing, because in a later interview, they mentioned that Drake asked them why this beat wasn't sent to them before Rick Ross. So whether Drake actually made his own song with this beat is kind of unclear. Either way, this is yet another beat that Drake passed up on. Up until now, we've been talking about Drake rejecting beats from various producers, but this last example is the opposite. It's probably the only story of Drake being rejected by a producer. The track I'm talking about is the now infamous Lift Me Up, which features lyrics that really speak to me as a human being.
Whoopie scoop, scoop-dee-dee whoop.
Now from the sounds of it and the way this beat is made, this seems like an incomplete beat to me. It has these huge kick drums, which has a bass tucked underneath it to start. And then throughout, we have a couple of different samples that are used. For one, we have this soul sample from the 70s. The sample's pitched up in classic Kanye fashion, and this is the part that gets used for the actual beat. Later on, we get an entirely different sample used, an 80s house song, which is actually a really cool, unusual sample to use in a beat. And here are the pieces that get used from the sample. Overall, it feels like there's space left over for more in this beat, making me feel like it's an incomplete beat idea. What makes this even weirder is that Kanye didn't even clear the samples on the song either, opening himself up to legal problems just to drop it. So why did he do this? Well, the story is somewhat explained by Drake here.
He played me Lift Yourself, and he was like, yo, you can have this if you want. And then from there, it was all good. And I was hype. I started writing to it. And then he was like, yo, you got to come to Wyoming. I was out there, and I spent all my time pretty much working on his stuff. And again, I left Wyoming, and I was like, okay, well, we left with Lift Yourself and like a pat on the back, you know.
So as the story is told, Drake helps Kanye with his music, and all he does is walk away with this one beat from him. Then for some unknown reason, he and Kanye begin to feud, and Kanye decides to waste this beat instead of letting Drake use it. Very strange, who knows why this happened. I certainly don't, because this isn't a gossip channel. But those are some of the biggest beats that Drake has rejected. Earlier, I mentioned that I have a similar video to this on beats that Jay-Z's rejected, so if you haven't checked that out, it's right next to me. Click like, click subscribe, tell your grandma about me, and watch the video next to me. If not, I'll see you next week. Bye bye.